year at 17, Nova Reyes stood on the steps of Hawthorne University with a suitcase in one hand and a stim ring in the other. She was the youngest in her program, computer science, of course. She'd skipped a grade. Her admissions essay on pattern recognition and emotional logic had gone semi-viral in niche neurodivergent forums. But none of that mattered right now, because everything was loud. The campus buzzed with noise, people, fluorescent lights, and the kind of conversations Nova didn't know how to enter. She had spent weeks preparing, scripting introductions, mapping her dorm layout, color-coding her weekly planner. Still, when her roommate arrived and said, "Hey, want to go meet everyone down the hall?" Nova froze. She smiled politely, said, "Maybe later." But inside, her brain whispered, "You're already behind." Act 2. The misunderstandings. The first week was a mess of social rules no one had written down. Professors said things like "we expect participation," but didn't define what that meant. Group projects turned into verbal ping-pong matches, and during a club fair, Nova got overwhelmed by the noise, left early, and overheard someone say, "She's kind of antisocial, right?" She wasn't antisocial. She just didn't know how to jump into conversations that moved like rapids. She didn't hate people. She just needed them to slow down. She started masking harder, laughing when others laughed, faking eye contact. At night, she stimmed quietly in the dark, tracing binary code on her bedsheet with her finger to calm down. Act 3. A spark. Everything changed in week 3. She was in the coding lab after hours when someone knocked lightly on the door. Ainsley, a second-year student from the Neurodivergent Peer Mentoring Club, smiled and said, "You're Nova, right? I read your essay. You wrote about how emotions are like algorithms. That was brilliant." Nova blinked. No one had called her brilliant in weeks. Ainsley invited her to a small ND-friendly meetup in the campus greenhouse. No icebreakers, just beanbags, tea, sensory toys, and people who got it. That night, Nova sat on a purple beanbag, quietly talking with someone who flapped when excited. No one told her to smile. No one called her to intense. It was the first time in weeks she exhaled without realizing she'd been holding her breath. Act 4. Becoming Nova slowly. She built her space. She started wearing her noise-canceling headphones in public. She asked professors for written instructions. She even made a short presentation in her dorm explaining unspoken neurodivergent needs with memes and graphs. It got shared in the RIS group chat. People started asking before hugging or interrupting. Nova didn't become the girl who danced at parties or raised her hand every class, but she became the girl who ran late-night study sessions with mind maps and color-coded snacks. She became the girl who made space, not by changing herself, but by being visible enough for others to change with her. Epilogue. Quiet no more. By the end of the year, Nova had made a small website called Neuronova, a guide to navigating university when your brain writes in its own language. It got picked up by a disability advocacy group. She spoke, softly but powerfully, at the university's neurodiversity inclusion panel. Someone asked, "What would you tell your first-week self?" She thought for a moment and said, "You're not broken. You're bilingual. You just speak both the language of logic and the quiet poetry of pattern."